Good morning, Boker Tov, everyone. I just put something in the chat. Psalm 133, verse 1. I think you'll know it. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam ya. Let's see some swaying. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet nashim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet kulanu yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet kulanu yachad. Hine ma tov umanayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov umanayim, shevet kulanu yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet kulanu yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet kulanu yachad. How great it is to be together. Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Thank you, Judy. And I'm so happy to say that Judy will be leading services with me Friday night. So for those of you who tune in to Friday night services at CBST on our Facebook page or through our website, Judy will be our chazanit, our balat tefillah, our cantor for Friday night. So I want to start with a few announcements before we dive back into Psalm 2. We are zooming through. Oh, ha, 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 what a joke. Oh, somebody asked me about what's behind me, and it's a very special thing, so I'm going to point it out. Hold on. Can everybody see this? So this was a gift that Allison Bechtel gave Randy and me when we got married. She did a drawing, that's Randy and me. Okay, so that's back here. Okay. Oops. Okay, so people have asked me about that cartoon. That's what it is. All right, so a few things. Starting Monday, not today, Babette, we're going to close at 10 past 10, but we're going to start instituting some security measures. Sadly, there have been what's now known as a new word, Zoom bombing. Can you believe it? There's already a word for this. People who have attacked Zoom classes, services, discussion groups. They have been anti-Semitic, so there have been Zoom bombing, which are attacking synagogues and synagogue classes. The class that our CBST member David Schmidt-Chapman was teaching at Sutton Place Synagogue on Tuesday was Zoom bombed by 20 Nazis who took over the screen and took over the chat and interrupted with disgusting anti-Semitic images and language. A friend of Rabbi Rapport's who was teaching a kindergarten class, Nazis took over and Zoom bombed the class. And last night, Harold was on a lesson being taught by the Imam, Khalid Latif, with whom we're so close, at the Islamic Center of NYU, and anti-Muslim Zoom bombers disrupted the class. So we have to do some security measures. You know, we thought we don't have a building, we don't have to have a security guard. Well, guess what? We have to have security guards and we have to have security measures. So these are going to be the measures that we're taking, and hopefully it will protect us. We haven't instituted them for today, but and hopefully we won't have a problem today, but going forward, these are the various things that will happen. The first thing is that at 10 past 10 or 10 past every hour of whatever event it is, the class will be locked, which means if you arrive 10 minutes afterwards, you won't be able to get in. And you'll have to just listen to a recording of it. So we're really asking everybody, whatever event you're going to, arrive 10 or 15 minutes early, because you will go through a waiting room like you did for this one, and we'll have to be able to identify you to let you in. And it'll take some time to identify everybody. It's like going through, you know, the metal detector. And obviously that's not foolproof. People can change names, but that's why one of the reasons that Babette said we need to be able to identify a name, especially for our closed CBST events, and you have to be let in one by one. So as a general rule, I mean, in general, if you need to ask a question, please raise your hand in the chat, in the participants area, and Sasha will call on you. But
And an iPhone just came in, and I just want to call example to that, that's what we're wanting to avoid. So
in
good
the
morning,
future,
iPhone, we want you to be named.
In the future, if your name is just iPhone or iPad, we can't let you in. So that's the issue we're dealing with. So just today, we're not making that because we wanted to make sure everybody hears it. So in the future, if your device just says iPhone or iPad, you cannot get in. And if you need help changing the name, we have folks who will be very happy to help you do it. Not me, because I have no idea how, but there are other people who can help you change that name. So we encourage you to any activity you come to that Zoom, get there 15 minutes early, 10 minutes early at the latest so that everybody can get into the room. And honestly, it's a way of getting, comfortable and setting up. Don't arrive at the moment the event is going to start. So for those of you who are CBST members and coming to the town hall, we will close the town hall 10 minutes after it starts. And if you're not there, you will not be able to get in. We're very concerned about that. And as you saw in the town hall invitation, this is going to be true of a lot of invitations now. You'll be asked to register first, and then the Zoom link will be sent to you. We won't necessarily publicize the Zoom link in advance so that it's another layer of security. Nothing is foolproof, of course. And the other thing that we'll be doing is the hosts will limit screen sharing to only the host. So if you're inspired to share a translation, can't think of the big words this morning, you can't do it. If you want Sasha or Harold to share your translation, you have to contact the TAs in the class, or if it's in another event, you have to contact whoever's running the class to share something. We can't make the screen sharing available to everybody because that's one of the ways the Zoom bombers have been downloading not only swastikas and anti-Semitic slogans, but pornography. One of the ways that they're interrupting classes is by streaming and downloading pornography in the middle of a class. Unbelievable, huh? 2 weeks of this and already the haters are figuring out the technology. And of course, they're better than we are at it. Anyway, so we are taking those security measures. We ask everybody to stay calm. If it happens in any class you're in, I suggest you just leave the class, just end, and we'll be back in touch. We will probably, if we can't eject somebody immediately, which Babette has the ability to do, we'll probably have to end a class and then restart it. It's the modern world we're in, right, folks? That Zoom bombing. I never even heard of Zoom a couple of weeks ago, and now we've got Zoom bombing. So you'll be seeing more about this, but we are taking the measures we can to make sure we can study, pray, sing, talk, be together as best we can. It doesn't affect Friday night services because it's not open to Zoom. It's live streamed. It's through the Facebook. So we will be watching in case people are posting things in the comments, but that's all they can do. They can't interrupt the service itself. Unless, who knows? I shouldn't say that, right? Hackers can probably figure out whatever, but right now that's not a concern. The same thing for the Zoom Seder next week. We'll be having to deal with how to secure that for those who'll join our Seder. But so just watch out for those measures. It does add another step or two, but then we all join together, we study, and we don't let the haters define us. We just do the best we can to be together. Okay, now I'll stop for any questions.
Saul just wanted to know if to do Deborah's class tomorrow, when we'll have to register.
Something will be sent out. We're not making a lot of changes this week because we're a little bit in the transition, but if it changes for tomorrow, you'll hear about it. If you don't hear a change, it means it's happening as usual, but by next week, everything will be changed, and it might get changed by tomorrow, but you'll be notified. Okay? Because we sent out the e-news on Tuesday and we didn't know about this on Tuesday, you know, Thursday's a few years later, right? So we have to catch up with everything. All right. Any other questions about this? Harold, did I cover everything?
I believe so. I'll be sending out, so with the emails, people have checked. I just posted my email, and that's where you should be getting the emails from. I'll have the rabbi's schedule on. I do an email at the end of every class. Also, things get posted on the Facebook page, although obviously not a password. If you want to share a translation, just go to the Facebook page. We have about 70 of you who've joined the Facebook page. You can post your translation. Everybody can see it and respond. People who've already been doing this, there's a lot of other fun stuff that has been posted on the Facebook page since yesterday.
And about the extra Friday session, which I can't be at, in discussion, we just realized that it was too much for Harold and Sasha to be taking that on. We can have the open room if people want to gather in small groups. On Fridays, the room will be open if you want to gather and study and talk about the Psalms. People are totally welcome to do that. So it'll be kind of like an open discussion about Psalms, but not taught formally. So, but it's a lovely opportunity. You could actually review the Psalm like in Chavruta, or just go through the Psalm with whoever is there and discuss it. So the room will be open for these 45 minutes, but it won't be moderated or formally taught. Okay, any other questions? So it's kind of a discussion section on our own. And Joyce, and now Judy and I, every Friday morning at 10, we have a session with whoever's doing the tech for Friday night services to go over all the issues related to Friday night. So that's why I can't be here on Fridays, and to get ready for Shabbat altogether. And on April 11th, we will be starting with Shabbat morning services. That's Shabbat Chol HaMoed Pesach. And look out for more information about that. We'll be Zooming Shabbat morning services. And we are so grateful because Harold Levine photographed the entire Sefer of CBST's Sefer Torah. So even though we don't have a Sefer Torah outside of the synagogue, we'll be using the photographs that Harold took to be able to lane and to read from the Torah. So we will be able to have a Torah service. We'll do it as best we can to have a beautiful service, and we will have an adult B'nai Mitzvah on April 11th that morning as well. So as of April 11th, not this Friday, not this Shabbat, but a week from this Shabbat morning, we'll start again with Shabbat morning services. Okay? All right, let's dive back into Psalm number 2. And I want to really thank people for asking me questions. And don't be shy about the questions you have. A lot of people say to me, well, I'm probably the only one who's dumb enough, or I don't have the background, or I don't understand. Believe me, everybody doesn't know this stuff. And some of us have some background, but if it's interesting to you to get clarification, I promise it will be interesting to other people. And see, yesterday, I think we had a great discussion about concepts that are essential to understanding the Psalm. And I really appreciate the people that reached out to me to ask for more information and felt that it was a little too fast for them. Don't hesitate to do that. You can do it to me privately or do it on the chat. And if I can't get to something in one class, we're here for a long time together. Isn't it a beautiful feeling? We don't have to rush through. We're not studying for the test. And I wanted you to notice something about what we did yesterday. Even though you could look at a word like Mishicho of the Psalm and translate it, until we had the larger discussion about the concept, even if you could translate a word, doesn't mean you really understand it. Because you have to understand a cultural context, which is so different than the one in which we live. You can't trust a simple translation. And I say this all the time to American non-Hebrew speakers who are trying to study the text and say to me, wow, it must be so easy for an Israeli who can just translate the Hebrew. But the Israelis have a problem because they think they know what it means because they have a word for it. But until you understand what the context was, for instance, until I say to you, in the ancient Near East, every son, every king, and I don't know if there were queens then, maybe there were, but whatever, every monarch considered themselves the child of God. Until I said that that was a common understanding of a monarch, when we would read the sentence that says, my son, the king, as I'm your child, etc., it sounds only Christian because our context is a Christian context. And we don't understand that even the Christians took it from a different context. So do you know what I mean? Translation is complicated, and you can't, when you're dealing with ancient texts, you can never assume the simple translation based on what you know about language is the translation. And in fact, we never know the translation. It takes time to, and we'll never be totally sure. The best we'll end up with is a range of understandings of what a sentence means. And that's why it's so hard to get context, but why I find it so much fun. And you really need to know Greek to understand Hebrew, the biblical Hebrew, because some of the biblical Hebrew we have, we only know what it is because it was translated to the Greek, and then some of the original Hebrew was lost. So sometimes we have to go back to the Greek to hear how it was translated from the Hebrew to the Greek. And the Greek, ancient Greek was closer to the ancient Hebrew than we are. So we imagine that they might have insight that we don't have. And so it takes a lot of going at it. So see, that great question that was asked brought out some really important things. The other thing that's so important is what religious imagery is powerful in the ancient Near East, and the role of mountains cannot be understated. And we'll see that over and over and over again. And I love the different things that people brought from different cultures. And as I said, if you Google sacred mountains or mountains as sacred, you'll read and see a lot of very interesting things in different cultures. Okay, now back to Psalm 2. Where's mine?
Shep has a hand raised.
Okay, yes. Shep?
Oh, yeah, I just want to say, to affirm what you're saying, Rabbi, that's why at the UN and frequently they don't use the word translate, they use the word interpret, because there's no real translation. You can't really use the word, you can interpret.
Good point. And I keep saying, and all the scholars will say that translation is interpretation, and we're just trying to get close to what the speaker meant. And we can't, it's hard to say for sure. We could say a range. So, and it's a matter of getting flexible in our thinking. That's why I keep coming back to this. And then on top of that, Psalms are poetry. Even poetry written today by a native English speaker. For those of us who are native English speakers, you can't just pick up a poem and automatically understand it, right? The language itself is not going to be direct in a way that we speak in prose. So that it's poetry, that it's ancient. What I love about it, it makes you slow down and you come back over and over again to the question, what do these words mean to me? But before we can get to that question, we have to play with what the words, we try to understand what the words meant to the psalmist, to the writer of the psalm. And then we keep building those layers. Do you know what I mean? Everybody with me?
Yes, and Harold has a comment.
Okay, thank you, Harold.
Really quickly, I scanned and emailed everybody the introduction to Robert Alter's translation yesterday, along with the first four Psalms. Many of the questions that we talked about yesterday, the David attribution, the ancient language, the history of the Psalms text, when they were written, who wrote them, is covered in this. It is a fascinating document to read through. You should all have it in your email.
Is this the book you're using?
That is the book. I sent the introduction and
so this is
the translation of Psalm 4.
Yeah, so this is Robert Alter's book, and we will get to it. I like to do his translation after we've done one run through, and then we'll look at his like we did for Psalm 1. But absolutely, this is not in Hebrew and English, by the way. His translations are only the English because he figures everybody can have the Hebrew, and that way he kept it from being massive. This is always a problem. If you do English and Hebrew, it doubles the size of any book. And 150 Psalms is a lot of Psalms. So, and this is, I wanted to show, this is Robert Alter's book, The Art of Bible Translation, that I think Harold mentioned also. I'm not sure you could see it, where it's really his meditations and his thinking on how he did the translation, what went into his thinking about translation. Much of what I'm saying when I talk about Alter's translations, I'm translating his descriptions for you. So you're getting that from me also. Okay, Psalm 2. Ready in the Hebrew. Everybody join me who can speak and read the Hebrew? Oh, there we go, in big letters. Thank you, Sasha. Lama ragshu goyim ulu'umim yehegu rik. Yitatzvu malchei eretz v'roznim nosdu yachad al Hashem v'al Mashicho. Ninatka et mesorotemo v'nashlicha mimenu avotemo. Yoshev bashamayim yischak Adonai yil'ag lamo. Az yidaber elemo v'apo uvchrono yivhalemo. And we're up to yivhalemo. Yes. Vani nasachti malki al Tzion har kodshi. Asapra el chok Hashem amar elai bini ata adon ani hayom yilidticha. Sha'al mimeni v'yetna goyim nachlatecha v'yachuz zatcha afsei aretz. Troem b'shevet barzel kichli yotzer tinapsem. Va'ata melachim haskilu hivasru shoftei aretz. Ivdu et Hashem be'ira v'gilu bir'ada. Nashku var pen ye'enaf v'tovdu derech ki yiv'ar kimat apo. Ashrei kol chosei vo. Okay, back to the English, top of the English. 1, why do nations assemble and peoples plot vain things? 2, kings of the earth take their stand and regents, oh interesting, regents intrigue together against the Lord and against his anointed. 3, let us break the cords of their yoke, shake off their ropes from us. 4, he who is enthroned in heaven laughs, the Lord mocks at them. Then he speaks to them in anger, terrifying them in his rage. But I have instilled my king on Zion, my holy mountain. Oops. 7, let me tell of the decree the Lord said to me, you are my son. I have fathered you this day. Ask of me and I will make the nations your domain, your estate, the limits of the earth. You can smash them with an iron mace, shatter them like potter's ware. And so now, O kings, be prudent, accept discipline, you rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord in awe, tremble with fright. Pay homage in good faith, lest he be angered and your way be doomed in mere flash of his anger. Happy are all who take refuge in him. All right, we're going to go back to the top. Let's leave that up there for right now. And I want to show, since we have the trup, the cantillation marks, in the Hebrew, I don't know how to do it. There's probably a way to even write on this, right? I don't know how to do that. So can you do it? Can you show where the et nachta is on the goyim here? I don't know how to. Can I do it or only you can do that?
If you share your screen, you can do it.
Oh yeah, I don't know how to do that.
We might work on this for next week.
For another time. Okay, great. So the third word in from the right in the Hebrew, that word goyim, look at that word. The little wishbone underneath, do you see that little upside down wishbone or wishbone? Is that upside down? No, that's a wishbone. Everybody see that? That wishbone is called the et nachta or the et nach. It is the semicolon that we've described. So if you look for that in every sentence, that's where the tradition tells us the sentence is divided exactly. So after the word in which the wishbone appears is where the semicolon exists. So you'll look for that wishbone. It's about in the middle of the sentence every time. And after that word is the end of the first phrase. So when we talk about biblical poetry, again, we always look for what's in the first phrase and what's in the second phrase. And that tells us a lot about what the author is trying to teach us and what the emphasis the author has. So it's about rhythm, first of all. So why do nations assemble? Semicolon, peoples plot vain things. I'm going to do this through the English just so that you hear it, although it doesn't work totally perfectly. Kings of the earth take their stand and regents intrigue together, semicolon. against the Lord and against his anointed. So you see where that break is. This translation is good because it's showing you where the break, where that semicolon is. Let us break the cords of their yoke, semicolon, shake off their ropes from us. He who is enthroned in heaven's laugh, semicolon, and there is the semicolon. The Lord mocks at them. He speaks to them in anger, semicolon, terrifying them in rage. I have installed my king. Actually, this is interesting because this is a little different. The Etnach says, I have installed my king on Zion, my holy mountain. And we'll see that Alter does this translation a little differently. Let me tell of the decree. The Lord said to me, you are my son, semicolon, I have fathered you this day. So you see, it changes the way this translation isn't totally doing it with it. Ask it of me, and I will make the nations your domain, semicolon, your estate, the limits of the earth. You can smash them with an iron mace, semicolon, shatter them like potters. Keep going. So now, O kings, be prudent, semicolon, accept discipline, you rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord in awe, semicolon, tremble with fright, pay homage in good faith, lest he be angered semicolon. No. This is an interesting one because this is longer. Pay homage in good faith, lest he be angered, semicolon, and your way be doomed in the mere flash of his anger. That's that. The semicolon goes where the period is. Very interesting. The final phrase is, happy are all who take refuge in him. Excellent. So I hope you're getting to see that. And where you have you can see the Etnach or the Etnachtah will tell you how the tradition tells us the verse is separated. And if we look at Alter, which we'll do when we finish the whole psalm in more detail, you'll see that Alter really goes along with that reading of the Etnachtah. Alter cares a lot about that rhythm. And other translators tend to say, I don't really think I should. Okay, so that's the first thing. So let's start a new verse because I'm going to stop soon for questions. So let's keep going down. I think we're up to did we do verse 6? Yes, because we talked about, you are my son, I have fathered you this day. For Jews of the ancient Near East, that's what all royal divine monarchs saw themselves as the son of God. Okay. Sha'al mimeni ve'na goyim nachlatecha. Ask of me, the question sha'al, sho'el, she'elah. Ask mimeni, from me. Ask it of me. So in other words, you start the conversation, people, so to speak. And I will give ve'na goyim, the nations. Remember we had the word goyim at the top of the sentence. Your inheritance or your domain, the achuztecha, and your estate, the limits of the earth. For the Israelis among us, what is the word achuzatcha remind you of? Famous in Tel Aviv history. Anybody here? We have any Tel Aviv history? What the original? Do we have any Israelis here who know this?
Well, I can tell you that in Haifa, there is a neighborhood called Achuza, or Achuza, which comes from this word.
Right. So the original division of Tel Aviv, when the Jews from Yaffo, the original 11 families, I think, or 13 families, or 15 families, what's that apocryphal number, whatever it was, left Yaffo and stood on the dunes and then divided up the dunes. Basically, they were on Rothschild, and they kind of divided up the dunes and gave it out. It was also called Achuza. That's how they used the. Somebody could look that up to get the details. It's a little vague, but it's the same concept. This estate. These will be the area, the estate. Okay, 9. Troem b'shevet barzel. Barzel is an iron. Is iron. Kichli yotzer tinapsem, and shatter them. Now this is very interesting because you could see they're using imagery that would have been common also in the ancient world, right? that these were a potter, and you'll see this imagery also throughout the Psalms and throughout biblical poetry, potters, smiths, though. And by the way, we have that beautiful psalm that we sing on Yom Kippur, you know, that we see God often as the ultimate creator, and those who are human creators are in God's image. So like the potter who makes his or her pots, like the iron worker who makes their things. So, but this is the opposite. You'll do the negative of creation. How will you handle those enemies? You'll be able to smash them, like with Barzel. Again, I'm moving through this so we could get through this psalm itself, and we'll go back to some of the details. All right, and then you'll shatter them like a potter. Okay, and where are we? Oops. V'ata malachim. So now malachim, melech is the singular, malachim is plural. So now kings, and now talking to the human kings. Ata with an ayin means now, as opposed to ata with an aleph, meaning you. And in modern Israeli Hebrew, the aleph as the ayin, the aleph and the ayin are pronounced the same, which is silent. But we know that the ayin was pronounced and had a pronunciation. And to this day, Jews from Arabic countries pronounce the ayin, and the aleph is silent. And we think that that's a closer to the pronunciation of biblical Hebrew, that the ayin was a guttural. I don't know, Yael, can you do it?
Sure. So the aleph is just the aleph as you usually hear it. The ayin goes further back in the throat. Ayin. In Hebrew, people say the word Aza for Gaza, but the Aza is really very close to the G. So Aza.
And and you can hear any Israeli speaking Hebrew. I mean, not those who were born in Israel, but the parents, those who came from an Arabic speaking country, their Hebrew is very, very, very different. And one of the ways it's different, not the only way, the way they pronounce the aleph, the ayin, the way they pronounce the chet is different than and these very much, and scholars think this was closer probably to the biblical pronunciation, because the ayin in grammar is considered a guttural, which, as Yael said, guttural means it's pronounced back in the throat. And it therefore has some grammatical implications, which we're not going to go into, but it was not pronounced the way a modern speaker of Hebrew would pronounce it. It was more like the Arabic speakers of Hebrew, Arabic Hebrew speakers. Malachim, haskilu. Now this everybody knows, even American Jews know the word seichel, right? Seichel, have a little seichel, like, you know, common sense. Seichel is the Yiddish word from the Hebrew word that's in this root. Haskilu, to have, this translation says prudent. It means something like be intelligent, or the word haskalah means enlightenment, like the Renaissance Enlightenment, and then the 19th century German Enlightenment is the haskalah. A maskil is somebody who is enlightened, who is intelligent. So it's now, you human kings, don't be like the kings up above in the beginning of the psalm. Now, you should be disciplined. We'll come back to this word, shoftei aretz. So there are two things, malachim, the kings, and shoftei aretz. Remember up above we had two words also for kings and for ruler and for advisors or the aristocracy. Same here. Okay, we're going to finish. Let's see if we can finish these as our ivdu et Hashem. Ivdu is the word avodah. It's also used for work or for worship or for prayer. Ivdu et Hashem, the four-letter name of God, be'ira, awe. Ira is, we call them yamim noraim, days of awe. This is the same word. Sometimes it's translated as fear. That's not a word I like for it. I really prefer days of awe, of feeling awe, really a sense of awe. Vigilu bir ada. And bir ada means to tremble, as you might before something so great. And then 5, nashku var pen ye'agnaf, v'tovdu derech ki yavar kimat dipo. Okay, so we're not going to go into the language too deeply here until we compare translations. But what I want you to notice is the final phrase, Ashrei kol chosivo. Happy are all who take refuge in Yud He Vav He, in the holy. So this is why many people see these two Psalms as being united, because we say we start with Ashrei Ha'ish Asher. Happy is the one who, back at the beginning of Psalm 1. Psalm 2 ends with, if you do all of these things. And I think Ben was the one who very beautifully said yesterday, Psalm 1 is about personal behavior and Psalm 2 is about national or communal behavior. So if you do these things that we've outlined, you will experience this, whatever how to define what Ashrei kol chosevo means. Ashrei, whether it's content or feel holiness, feel at peace, feel happy in a deep sense. Okay, so I'm going to stop now for some questions for our final moments, and we'll continue on Monday with Psalm 2, and we're going to start comparing translations.
So we're going to go first. Hillary had a question. She wanted to clarify about anointed.
Yes?
Hillary, do you want to just come on and ask your question? And I'm going to ask you to stay muted, please, everyone, unless I am calling on you, just to keep it organized. Thank you. Hillary, do you want to come on?
So my question is about in that if get my copy here. So if his anointed in that, I guess it was the second big phrase, is not kings and princes. Who is it?
Hold on, which verse are we talking about?
I'm looking at the Alter translation. Kings
I
of the
need to know which verse we're talking about.
It looks like the second in the Alter translation, and it's the
His
end.
anointed, yes, his anointed means the king. His anointed means God has anointed a king to rule, but a human king.
Are together against the Lord. But it says the kings and princes conspire.
Those are the kings of the other peoples. Those are the bad kings. So in other words, all peoples in those days had kings, right? That was the common political.
So this is a nationalistic kind of comment?
Say again?
This is a nationalistic sort of comment?
Yes, this is definitely talking about the nation of Israel, that the kings of the other places are, this is in the literal sense. Again, we'll get to the other levels. The literal sense, the kings of the other peoples are against us. They take counsel against us and against the anointed of God, who is the king of the anointed one. But you could really easily hear how it sounds Christian, unless you really kind of stay in that, what it would have meant to the ancient Near East. But that's why for Christians, this psalm is it means Jesus.
Okay, or nationalistic.
Not for Christians, for Jews it means.
No, for Jews.
For Jews, yes. For Jews it means, in the ancient Near East, all the different kingdoms had kings, and this was talking about the kingdoms that were trying to destroy us. And yeah, good.
Thank you.
Good question.
And actually, Peter had some thoughts about this topic. Ancient monarchs were not only the select anointed by gods, but were themselves either the chief priest or celebrant and or a divinity by descendant from the ruling god. As such, they combined both the temporal and spiritual ruler on earth. The Hebrew kingdoms almost uniquely separated church and state.
Excellent. Who said that point? I was going to get to that, but not today. But who said that point?
Peter Klein.
Peter Klein. Excellent. Yes, this is a very deep point. We're going to spend more time on it. That while the Jew or Israelite kings were anointed by God, we also had the prophets we had a split leadership structure in the ancient Near East, which was unusual. the king was not alone. The king had a prophet, and the prophet, whoever the head prophet was, so to speak, had a lot of power, which is very different than exactly what you're describing, where it's totally one, where the church and state are together. It's not that the king wasn't the head of everything, but there was also a prophet who was shared power. That's a big topic, but Peter, right on, totally right on. I wasn't going to get there yet, and we'll get there more because it's a very interesting structure. And it had some very interesting, because we know there are times where the prophets really disagreed with the king, and there were some pretty big conflicts. So it's very, very good point. Very good point.
And then Marcia initiated a conversation about what poetry, whether poetry existed in that time as such, or was it a private journal in verse, or was there a different understanding?
Poetry definitely existed. We have examples in the ancient Near East of all different poems. And that, if you're interested, maybe we should gather some of these big topics because I can address them. It's a very interesting thing. We have poems, and in fact, probably poetry was more common as a form of oral tradition because it was easier to memorize and to repeat, kind of like you imagine people singing songs to tell the stories of their people around campfires. Look, these things that we're looking at, we have no examples of them being written down for 1,000 years. So people were probably, the recitation of a poem, memorizing and reciting it like a song is easier to remember than a long prose piece. So like the story of Gilgamesh, the ancient Near Eastern story of Gilgamesh is really a poem. And so we do have some examples. You have to remember there aren't a lot of examples of written things from this period of history because parchment in general does not survive. And when you think about archaeology, the things that survive are going to be pottery that's been baked. So things that are written on pottery that's been baked, we have, but things that are on parchment with some very important exceptions and kind of fluke exceptions, we don't have a lot of writings. If writings were done on parchment, they pretty much have disappeared. So what we have are oral traditions that got written down probably hundreds of years after they were composed, but people would pass them back and forth. But we don't have a lot of written, we have very small number. You've heard me talk that the oldest thing that we have of any writing in any Jewish anything is on a silver piece of amulet probably, or some silver, tiny piece of silver, and silver survives, that was found in Jerusalem, that has the priestly blessing on it in ancient Hebrew alphabet, probably from the First Temple period. It's likely the only thing we have from the First Temple period, because guess what? Stuff doesn't survive. Unless it's a rock or a baked piece of pottery, things don't survive. So that, by the way, is in the Israel Museum. It's a tiny piece of silver like this with the writing of the ancient Hebrew alphabet, which is different than the Hebrew alphabet we're looking at right now, but we can read it. And it has a piece of the Yivarechacha, the Birkat Kohanim, the priestly blessing, or the blessing of peace that we say in services all the time. And it's in Fiddler on the Roof, may the Lord protect and defend you, that thing. That's it. Okay, we have to end now. Look at this, the time flies by. So
we do have to end, and there's some very beautiful comments. I hope you all are checking out the discussion as we move through it.
And if there are questions, I'll take them down and we'll get to them next week.
Great. So there are going to be some questions about the vertical line. There are going to be some questions about who the praise was to, and I'll capture a few more too.
Right, thank you. And I think Cantor Jacob Nimi is going to lead us out with us singing from a psalm.
Jacob, we're doing I Dear Who again, yes?
Yes, but I think we're going to pick up with a different verse or whatever we have, whichever text we have available. So whatever Judy sent you. Oh yes, okay. Yeah, let's pick up with maybe a little bit further up actually. though it doesn't really matter. But we did the Bachur Hu verse. So why don't we do the two verses after that, Hadur Hu and Chasid Hu. Hadur hu vatiku zakai hu yivne beto vekarov bimhera beyamenu bekarov el bnei bnei beto vekarov chasid hu Tahor hu, Yachid hu, Yivne beto bekarov, bimhera beyamenu bekarov, el bnei beto bekarov. One more, Kabir hu, Lamud hu, Melechu yivne beto bekarov bimhera beyamenu bekarov el bnei beto bekarov.
Thank you, everybody. See you either tonight at the town hall or tomorrow night at services or Monday morning at Psalms class. Bye-bye, everybody. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.